or feel free to catch us. Yes, studio audience, yeah! Or catch us, there you go, there's a studio audience. Or catch us online, so we're either Facebook Live or Instagram Live. Now, every week what we're doing here is that, we're uncovering somebody's story who's sitting in this wonderful chair. Uncovering their story with two things in common. So the first thing is that people inspire people. That's the first. And the second one being that we're here in beautiful Bali in Indonesia, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which basically means that, it's unity in diversity. These two themes always find their way to the surface of whichever conversation that we have going on right over here. So without further ado, I just want to introduce Bo from Scholars of Sustenance. Welcome, Bo.
Well pronounced.
I was trying really hard to really make sure that the elocution lessons were in full effect.
It's the worst name of a charity ever, right? And try to then do it with emails, right? Scholarsassistance.org 1,000,000 times.
And so you've been this incredible serial entrepreneur, setting up charities and foundations around the world, it feels like, which has been doing some incredible greatness and good for the planet. And obviously Scholars of Sustenance focuses more about the food waste and how we can more efficiently deal with that to help the other members of society which perhaps are going through a tougher time. But my question to you to start with was that so you were born in Denmark, you mentioned before, and so was there? I haven't been to Denmark before. I've been to Iceland, right, which I think is close-ish, but very different. So what is life like, growing up in Denmark for someone who perhaps hasn't been there before?
Well, it's a very much a society where we look out for each other, and I think that's part of the inspiration for SOS, that we believe in education and we believe in equality. So, people in Denmark are taken care of in an amazing way. You lose your job, there's help. I mean, there's a lot of safety. So everybody is part of a society, right? Whereas in many other societies you have rich and poor, very different. But in Denmark, everybody is pretty much the same.
Got it. And then for you, so big family, small family, like as a kid growing up, what sorts of experiences would you find in Denmark?
Well, it's very family-oriented. I came from a small family, but very much families belong together, see each other all the time, get together for times of year, Christmas, etc. It's very family-oriented.
Got it. And then, so with you, growing up, you mentioned that Denmark is an incredible place in the sense that very family-orientated. I love the inclusion. The fact that, like you look after one another, and as you mentioned, that was a leading step or driver for you, probably in the life that you kind of had, right? So, with SOS, for example, can you tell maybe people here who perhaps don't know what SOS means? It's not save our souls, but in many ways it kind of is, isn't it? It's like save our souls, but with food. But maybe you can explain to the people here what SOS is, what its purpose is, and kind of how you started it.
Yes, but I think we have to split it into two. There's the one that we founded in order to do the things we wanted to do for people, and then there's the one that we are now during COVID, which is completely different, right? We all had to reinvent ourselves. But SOS, Scholars of Sustenance, was created to take care of the underprivileged in society for food and nutrition. And it basically had to do with surplus foods. We realized, in fact, I'll share how it all started. I sat in a hotel in Thailand where we started all this, and I saw during happy hour an incredible amount of food. And at 7 p.m., boom, the bell went off, and the waiters came in and took like 95% of the food out and threw it in the trash. It was just unbearable to see. I've been optimizing, stuff my whole life. That's basically the software company that I had. We optimized cash for banks, right? And I looked at this and I thought, wow, forget banks. We need to look at this for people, because I went over there and I said, all this food, it goes into the trash, but I see a container down there. This is a tall hotel, right? I see a container down there. Does it really go into the container? Yes, sir. We have to throw it away. Otherwise, if the hotel allowed us to take it home, maybe we'd be cooking more and so on. So it all goes in the trash. So I said, I can also see on the other side of the wall down there, the container, there are some people who pretty much look like they need it. Don't they crawl over the wall at night and get it out of the container? And she said, no, sir, we have guards with guns, right? And that's when it hit me, you know, if we could lift all of that waste out of that system and into another system, we could solve it, right? Because when we went to the hotels and said, can we take your surplus foods to the poor? Are you kidding me? You're going to poison them? No way, you know, it'll all be traced back to us and so on. So we had to lift it out of one system and into another, right? And that is basically what SOS was created to do. We pick up the foods, surplus foods, that otherwise would have gone to waste, gone to the landfill. And you know, food in landfill creates methane gases, that's much worse than CO2 and so on. Sure. And that's really what it was all created to do. We lifted all this food up, we inspected it, threw away the 2% that couldn't be used and got it out same day to people. And we did that from hundreds of hotels and tons of edible food every day. It was really amazing, right? Until, boom, there came COVID. And you know, all of us have suffered through COVID, and you know, we had to realize this was a new world. So in Thailand, we had about half the food from retailers and half from hotels. So half of it disappeared overnight. But here in Bali, we hadn't quite gotten so far. So 100% of the food disappeared overnight. Wow. Simply, all the hotels. Well, we had about 85 hotels, you know, some of the very large hotels, and all the food disappeared overnight. And then we sat there looking at each other, the cooling trucks rotting away in the parking lot, saying, what are we going to do now? And then the government stepped in, Korean rice, you name it. There were all sorts of things coming our way. And all of a sudden, we were more busy than we ever were before. And then some very large food manufacturers came to us. And then we started thinking, all these strange kinds of food, what can we do with it? So we had some chefs, and they said, we'll cook. And you probably heard over in Sanur, we set up a very large kitchen. We now have 3 kitchens, one here in Canggu, one in Ubud, and we're cooking thousands of meals every day, right? So I think 250,000 meals last year were cooked in the kitchens. But in Bali alone, we did 1.5 million meals last year. And you know, that was quite an achievement. We have some really hardworking people in SOS, and you've met some of them, right? And boy, I mean, the drivers, the container cleaners, you name them, right? But everybody is working so hard simply to pump out all this food, because we know that, you know, you have earthquakes, you have different situations where you need to get food out quickly, but this is different. This darn crisis, it just hangs around, it won't go away, right? And people are hungry. So if we can cook nutritious meals, then we can boost immune systems and help people stay healthy for as long as possible, right? And that's basically what SOS is all about. So yes, we started it for surplus foods, but now we're cooking like crazy.
Cook up the food! Like, yeah. You know, like it's. I was watching. It was a documentary, and probably on Netflix, you know, and it was about Mark Zuckerberg, and there was this particular grab that they took, which was, you know, that he started, you know, Facebook obviously on the campus, and it was a way to keep in touch with his friends and his buddies and so on, and then he kind of saw it as a way, you know, to basically, you know, to then increase it to the whole campus. But the interesting part that pricked my ears up was that, you know, he was saying that I never set out to start this billion-dollar company, whatever it is. It started just to fulfill a need. And once we got to that place, it was like, well, what next? You know, we've reached this, what next? And then there'd be another problem that would come in and be like, well, that's a problem. How do we solve that? And then that took them on to the next progeny, the next reincarnation, the next step forward. So now Scholars of Sustenance, as you mentioned, it's not a small company now by any stretch of the imagination, right? So that when you started it, I mean, was it like a bootstrapping start for you? Did it start? Where did it start? How small was it? What kept you going? What wins did you have along the road that were like, you know, I think we can keep on going with this?
Well, in some ways we were fortunate, right? I mean, we had a foundation set up already that had had some cash to kickstart it. And the whole purpose of that was, we're going to do this. And people told us, it's not going to be possible. There are no poor people in Thailand. There are hungry people. And for some reason, we didn't have any problem finding that. But, it took a while to prove the concept and get people convinced that you can actually save food without taking risks and so on. So in the beginning, it took a little bit of time. But after that, it's been just going straight up. It's been crazy, right? And we were, I guess, fortunate to be in position for COVID. Sadly, that when it hit, we already had our cooling trucks, we had our staff in place, and could just simply run with it. So, and now it's like we can't stop. We don't know what to do. All my friends, when I call, we're so bored, we don't have a lot to do, and so I was like, gosh,
I know what you can do.
Yeah, COVID is here. Let's run.
And on that, like with the staff, right? So all the staff that I've met, including the two in front of us here, all the staff that I've met, like DJ and the guys, what I find is that they're extremely motivated, very heart-centered, right? And just the sorts of people that you just feel good around, right? They just got that thing, right? They just feel good around. You want to be around. How do you find these people, or do they find you?
No, I mean, it's a two-way street, right? You meet people, but we believe a lot in hiring attitude. It's not so much experience and, can you do the job and so on, but someone. So DJ is a good example, not to say anything personal, right? But, I mean, I interviewed 20 people in a Starbucks here in Bali, and he was probably the least suited because, I had to look at him and say, did you park the surfboard outside? I don't think this, we're talking spreadsheets and numbers and so on, but his attitude, right? And I think that's including here, right? The attitude is important. That's how, because like you say, people come in and they gain some interest in doing it, and we're fortunate. We're fortunate in that we are a foundation, but we do run it like a business. That means we have budgets. We know when we're going to buy the new cooling truck. We start out the year with business methods, right? So nothing is left to coincidence. But then, of course, the year goes on and things change and so on. But it is a combination between the typical NGO and a business, right? It is non-profit. So obviously, it is all money going in one direction, but we spend it wisely.
And then I know you've had a really incredible background leading up to this in business and Entrepreneur of the Year with one of the other companies that you had. So if I would ask you, with something that you're doing now, the Scholars of Sustenance, which particular aptitudes or skills that you picked up along the way that are essential to what you do now?
Well, one of my daughters said it the other day that the software company, which lasted 20 plus years, was probably just prep for SOS, right? And I think problem solving, predicting what might come later, and then people management, people motivation is probably the most important.
And how do you motivate your people? So is it something from within you, or is there a methodology behind it that you found to be really helpful or useful? Or
well, I wouldn't tell you that, so they can listen. But
give away your secrets! Give away your secrets! Come on!
I mean, no, actually, it's not that sophisticated. When you do something like we do, with the heart in the right place, it drives itself. I mean, we are so focused. Like I said, when all the food disappeared, it wasn't like I had to sit down and said, now what do we do, right? I mean, everybody was brainstorming, everybody was making it happen, because there was only one thing that drove it all, and that is people are getting hungry, there's a need out there, and that's what we have to serve. It's not about the individuals and the organization and so on. It's about running out and doing the right thing.
Got it. And then, so going back to your a little bit more to your past, in Denmark, as you mentioned. So I get the sense that as you mentioned before, it's a community that is extremely well adept at looking out for one another, extremely well adept at looking after one another, and if someone's down, to extend that hand, and pull them up, or help them to come up. So is there any experiences towards your childhood that kind of stand out to you when I mention about, the greater good helping someone up, pulling someone through, inspiring someone, mentoring someone, or maybe someone mentored you? Is there anything like that in your past that comes up?
Not individually, but as a society. Denmark is a place where you look out for each other, and you learn that when you grow up. We're all a product of our upbringing, right? And I think learning that education has value and making sure that everybody takes care of each other. I mean, that also means high taxes and things like that. But it is a society, and the problem nowadays is that these societies cannot really coexist with the poverty in the rest of the world, right? You have to find ways to change these societies, and that is a challenge. But I think from my childhood, yeah, it has a lot to do with just growing up in an environment where everybody were equal. There wasn't really any difference between us, when we grew up. And that was religion. I mean, it was skin color. It was everything, right? I mean, just the same. And that, I guess, was the foundation.
Yeah, got it. And look, so we just met, right? Like 5 minutes before, maybe like a 2-minute chat.
Very short, yeah.
Because I was late. Oh, late. It was a shocking day at work. Not shocking. It's a good ending, right? So again, like, I love the fact that you're a dad, right? And you mentioned before you got 3 kids who are all grown, and like, so going back to the kids and acknowledging that it's how we're brought up. We're a product of our environment, right? And so your kids, without going too personal, your kids, what are you proud of what they've achieved, and what did you try to seed into them, if there was anything, as they were growing up?
Ooh, now we have to switch off the microphones again. No, but I try to get into them the beliefs that is the foundation of it all. And what I'm proud of is, of course, the education that they have taken on, and that they are the kind of people that they have become. And there I have to say, in general, the younger generation, including the ones working at SOS, I loved it. My generation was more about getting a job, setting up a family, making enough money to have a good life, and so on. But kids today have a different attitude, right? They still want those things, but they also want to do it with a socially responsible way. And I love it. I mean, in SOS, the kind of people that we have are really into it. And it's not just about money. I said we're running it like a business, so all our staff is payroll. We pay salaries, and that's how we create these amazing results quickly, because we can actually rely on people doing what they're told to do, what the plan calls for them to do, and so on. But again, the attitude is important, and that's where the young people today are just amazing.
And like on that note, so that we call it embracing diversity and inclusion. So basically what it means is, that Bonnick Tungulika, right? Embracing diversity and inclusion. So one of the things which I can just popped in, which is an amazing opportunity, right, for you, is that, so with Scholars of Sustenance, as you mentioned, you've got so many different backgrounds of people that are working with you, right? And they have this chance to, as you mentioned, the new generation coming up seem to be more aware than our generation about values in the sense of planetary and looking after one another and humanity on a grander scale, probably. So in terms of this mixing of cultures, this mixing of experiences and backgrounds and so on, is there anything that you've been doing at Scholars of Sustenance in between all of the work, right? Get the food out, get the food out, get the food out. Is there anything that you've been doing as a company? Because as a person, which I've just met, I'm really getting a sense that you love instilling belief in people, that you don't see color, you just see human beings. You love people who are inspired and driven and motivated, but may not be the most well qualified for the job, but their heart is in the right place, powerful place. So the question is then, is there anything that you've noticed or that you've set up or that you've maybe inspired at Scholars of Sustenance for your staff to interact and to get to know each other and have this social mixing going on?
Yes. First of all, we operate so far in 2 countries, right? And these 2 countries are vastly different. But for most Westerners, they're Asian countries. But Thailand is Buddhistic. Here, it's a kind of a mixture, but it's a wonderful set of values, right? And to cross those are amazing, and that's where maybe that business strategy has paid off in that everybody speaks numbers, right? We don't speak each other languages, cultures are vastly different between these countries, but we can all understand these numbers, and we are proud when we can show that, the impact that we've had on society, on the poverty and so on. That's something we can all join together and really be happy about.
Got it. And so why Bali? I didn't ask you that. Yeah. So why did you find yourself?
We started it actually in Thailand, and we now it's bigger up in Thailand. We did 5.25 million meals. Was it that? Yeah, last year in Thailand, and 1.5 million here. So we're growing, but we believe a lot in hotels and surplus foods and so on, and started where there were the most hotels, and it was either Jakarta or here, and we chose Bali because it's prettier.
You didn't hear that here.
Yeah, it's beautiful here, of course.
More
but we are actually planning on going to Yogyakarta next. So Java is coming. And we should have been there by now, but COVID kind of threw us for a loop. In Thailand, we have Phuket Island and Hua Hin, and we're going to Chiang Mai this year. So, we're expanding. Hope for a new country too, but we'll see how it goes. Nobody knows where COVID has taken this world, right? Yeah,
that's absolutely true. And, on that note about future expansion and plans, where do you see Scholars of Sustenance can be? Maybe, I don't know, let's not give it a date necessarily, but an intention.
Yeah, I don't know that I'll see it, but we have a vision called food equity. And food equity is a very long-term. First we feed people. That's obviously what we've been thrown into doing even more of now. But we have a mid-stage, which is to use the food intelligently, apply it intelligently, all these food resources, because they are basically free, right? Not all of them, but certainly the surplus foods that we used to rescue, it's free food that needs to be applied in the best possible way. If we can do that intelligently, then we can lift people out of poverty. And that is the next stage, where we may throw in some microloans, we may throw in some other things, water filters and so on, in order to lift people out of poverty, but have them lift themselves out of poverty. But the long-term strategy is this food equity, where basically we want to have access to good nutrition, be independent of money, right? That's a dream, of course, but to some degree, and the reason why we came to Asia in the first place was because more people are coming out of poverty into middle class in Asia than anywhere else in the world. And if we can take all of those people that are newcomers into middle class, now they're starting to throw away all the same foods as everybody else and so on. And if we can capture all of that food and then get it into the hands of those who still are not middle class, right, then we can kind of have that cycle turn around. So.
Thank you. And so I'm a person who loves collaboration. I'm sure there's many of us that do. So, and I see, we had here a couple of weeks ago, Made Janur, the plastic exchange. We had some friends who started Seeds, which is an alternate civilization. It's about regenerating the planet, backed by a blockchain solution as well. So I see that there's all of these amazing people or amazing projects uplifting humanity, which is a personal vision of mine, not vision, but mission. Right? Me, it's about uplifting humanity. It's about the next 50 years. The intention is, how can I directly or indirectly impact positively 1 billion people plus, right? That's something which I grew up with and I'm committed to, and it's by doing things like this and anyway. So my question then is that, if there was a collaboration that you could envisage for Scholars of Sustenance going forward to be able to really multiply, what kind of company or organization would that be with?
Well, we already have a lot of partners, amazing people helping us. But if you focus on just the problem, always go back to the problem of what it all is. And if you remember only one thing from this, remember 10-7-1. Right, 10-7-1, because we're 7 billion people in this world. It's getting close to 8, but okay, 7 billion people, right? The world produces enough food for 10 plus billion every day, right? And yet 1 billion goes to bed hungry every night. So this is not so much about just hunger and just a scarcity of foods. It's a distribution problem. We're simply throwing away so much, and that's why we used to say, oh, don't give people food. Teach them how to, don't give them fish. Teach them how to fish, right? And I guess some years ago we said, no, stop. We got enough fish out of the ocean. Let's eat what we have. And that's how it all started, right? It's a distribution problem, and we've got to focus on that. So who can help with this? Obviously, the food industry. The food industry that produces all this food with more efficiency and a view to how to do things not necessarily all for profit, but for in this food equity, for trying to make things a little more even in the world, right? And that's where we've now met some amazing senior management people from these companies, and they get it, right? But they have to get this little extra kick. And what also impresses me is that most large companies now have some kind of, like the CEO has some kind of sustainability factor in the bonus, right? Most large companies have realized that it's not enough just to focus on profit. You have to be a good corporate citizen. You have to do more. And that's where people like us are standing on the side, ready to say, hey, we got an idea. Let's do this, right? And if we can turn this into a movement so that we don't have to hire everybody and do it personally and so on, but food rescue becomes a movement, just like food banks have existed. I mean, you're familiar with food banks from the West, right? That's not so popular here, but food banks are more about non-perishables and so on, right? But food rescue is taking nutritious food and get it to the people same day, right? And that is a very different way of doing it, but it's really worth it, right? And you can see the results. So that's where the food industry as such, and the logistics people and everybody associated with that industry has to come together and be more efficient.
Got it. And one of the things that sticks in my mind about what you're saying, which I love, right, is you've identified the problem is a distribution problem. You've also identified that this food equity, this concept of food equity, but also that's part of the solution, and the education piece, to help. I think you mentioned, help the people empower themselves, which I love, right? Because I think and that's possibly where, when the collaboration question came up, that's probably where I was kind of going. So with the education part of it, is there any types of education partners that will be great for you to connect with? Or?
Yes, absolutely. And we are already working with universities in both countries. But the logo, right, Scholars of Sustenance, it's actually based on having those two principles, right? It is education and sustainability for food. And the education is clear that we just haven't gotten to it yet, but we are planning to have scholarships. So we will go into villages. One day, if you get the chance to go on one of the cooling trucks up into the mountains and see it is amazing, right? And the Banjars here in Bali will then get the most needy people together, and then we make sure they and their families get food. But the next step is to lift some of those kids out of those places. And again, it's very different in Thailand compared to here, with the education system and so on. But I think we have an opportunity to get maybe a handful of kids from each village and put them through some kind of education with a little contract that they have to go back and do something for their community for 1 year or something like that, right? But education is very much part of all of it. Without education, societies don't have that togetherness. And that's, again, what I think I learned in my home country, right? It's, what is it called? Social capital, I think. Yeah. When you have so much invested in police and in society around you, whatever it is, right? But you're part of something, right? And that, I think, is maybe one of the problems we now see in some places where now we all have to wear masks, for instance, right? And, maybe that's a good idea for all of us. But we have to accept we're part of community. Do you want a vaccine or not, right? But I mean, there is an obligation because you're part of a group of people. And that's where education lifts people up, right? And when I have to be honest, when I see it in some of these countries, I see poverty that I would never see in Denmark, right? Because we were all the same, and the secretary would make maybe half the money of the CEO in Denmark, because after taxes it was pretty much the same, but not so in most other countries, right? And that's how you gain a different view, I suppose.
Yeah. And there's two people that come into mind, right? One is David from IG Center, who's an incredible educator, beautiful guy. And I think he's from Vietnam, actually. But anyway, beautiful guy. And they're about to do a project in West Kalimantan, which you may know already. And that's about, it's like a 15-year plus plan. And it starts with education. And it's a piece which is vital because then it's about bringing Indonesia, or certain parts of Indonesia, into the next wave, which I'll couple with another guy we had on here before, a guy called Wahyu Taufik, who is Indonesian, probably one of the most accomplished 28-year-olds of just people actually in general, right? And what I love about him is that he is incredibly inspired, motivated, driven to bring the next wave of Indonesians coming up into a different path of greatness. And education is that missing link. So he's set up about 8 different companies and is working with the government on some, and a digital nomad foundation, but brilliant guy. And then he's also working with another friend called Aaron Machano, who is providing this other piece of education that's more about financial literacy. And so the idea is that that this becomes a collaboration with government, and so therefore, because I think Indonesia is, as you mentioned prior, I think it's the #1 country in the world with population under the age of productivity, which basically means that the next 10, 15, 20 years, huge growth is possible because labor here is skilled and so on. So where's I going with that? Not sure, but I just wanted to inform you. Maybe I can connect you guys together. But
I think you're hitting the point that Indonesia is an incredibly exciting society, right? The average age is 28.4 years, I saw the other day. It's a young society, and there's so much going on. And with the new government trying to make things happen in a different way than before, I think it's fascinating. Really an incredibly moving society. They have so much opportunity, and obviously being the 4th largest population in the world, and also a diversity with so many different religions and so many different ways of doing things. There's just some of the people in Jakarta that I used to work with in the banking world and so on, I mean, I was floored at how imaginative, and they were not held back by many things other than traffic, but but they were not held back. It was just amazing to see all this activity going around, and we would go out and talk over dinners, and there was just so much going on up there. And I think that still has to spread out to the rest of the country, but Indonesia definitely has a huge opportunity for being that, right? It's also, I have to say, the 2nd biggest food waster in the world, and that's why we're here, right? But again, food is a different thing here. Food is easily available and so on. But Indonesia, incredible place.
Yeah. And then, so if anybody thank you for that, appreciate it, filling in the gap. I was like, where am I going? Bo is like, bring me back, Bo, bring me back. So just in terms of, what I love, the question that comes up a lot here is, how you can be contributed to, because a lot of people sitting in your seat are contributing to Indonesia. This is obviously called Destination Indonesia because it's about Indonesia. Now, we obviously love it here in Bali, and we think the highest of it. And it's also about the people who are from here, as well as the people who either work here or call here home for whichever period of time. So if someone here sees Scholars of Sustenance, right, how can they contribute to Scholars of Sustenance? What can they do?
Well, obviously, there is so much going on, both on this island and Java and everywhere else, right? It's not just SOS that you can help, but we bring something here. We just talked about how amazing Indonesia is, and the people in Jakarta and so on. Some Westerners bring something new to the table, and how can you contribute? Obviously, we're building an organization. We're trying to get independence. You probably heard about the Million Meals March coming up. Yeah. We did the Million Meals Paddle last year, which was the biggest fundraiser in Bali, and it was during COVID. It's amazing, right? So there are many things like that you can help with, even just participating. But obviously, there's two things any organization like us needs, right? And it's people and money. And money, again, is fundraising and private funding and so on. But getting excitement around it, that's part of the mission. And, if we can help impact where, for instance, people in Sumatra start making a similar organization to cut food waste and not have the food end up in the landfills and so on, then I may never hear of it, but mission accomplished.
Got it. And so let's go back to the Million March. If you can explain that, maybe people here are not sure what that is. So if you explain it to them, what it means and what's the significance.
But just like the Million Meals Paddle last year, which we will now make into an annual event. We were suffering a bit from COVID, and some of our big sponsors didn't want the names on just in case we made a spreader event. But of course, we're very cautious, and we follow all the rules and so on. So in this case, it will be people walking from, is it Yeganga up there? And going to be walking 30 kilometers, yes. And all for the good of a charity, right? So yeah, I mean, it's another fundraising event. We have others. We have people that run for us, that have been bicycling for us, and so on. And again, that's where you see everybody coming together, right? I mean, Bali is a great place, and people are coming together. So we look forward to this on March 2027. Glad Rico can tell me here.
So now, for those, by the way, guys, we're going to go to you, the studio audience, shortly. So if there are any questions that you have, just think about what that might look like or sound like or actually be. And then we'll get a microphone to you. And once you get the microphone, feel free to turn it towards your mouth. I know it sounds so obvious, but every week people are going like... And they
I'm glad you told me.
I know. And they wonder why we can't hear them. It's like, turn the microphone to your mouth. So remember to turn the microphone to your mouth, all right? So please remember that. It's crazy every week. So if you had the opportunity, right? So, you've been phenomenally successful. The software company for 20 years, which you haven't gone into. And obviously, Scholars of Sustenance has done, has made a huge impact in a massive ocean, right, of need. And, but if somebody's watching you now and kind of wondering, which we could do this, like kind of almost like a what advice, right, would you give the younger you, right, for maybe those people who are watching here, right, and they're thinking, you know what, I'm thinking about starting a charity. I'm thinking about doing something because I feel very strongly about this and I want to do something about it, right? So almost framed like that, like what advice would you give like the younger Bo in Denmark, to say, hey Bo, this is what you need to do. What would that look like?
Think big. I think not being restricted by your surroundings and so on, but just simply come up with an idea and get behind it. And it's whether it's business or it's charity or whatever, once you get behind something and really feel it and live it, then it just takes on a life of its own.
Thank you. Got it. Now, guys, does anyone have a question? Put your hands up. One over here at the back. So we'll get a microphone to you, right?
That you have to speak into.
Speak into, yeah. Remember, turn it towards your mouth. Brother Itchy, can you just switch off my phone? I think the battery's about to die. Yeah.
No. Yes.
There you go.
Hey, thank you so much for sharing so far. What's your take on bringing more excitement into this whole sustainability topic? Especially, let's talk about food.
Well, to bring more excitement into it takes people to get behind it, right? And sustainability itself is something that people talk about a lot, too much, to be honest. So you got to do, right? We all got to start living a little bit along those lines. But I would say just education around it, and for people to see the benefit. It's difficult, right? I mean, we, for instance, measure all the kilos and the meals that we serve and so on, but we also measure the CO2 that we're taking out of the atmosphere, right? And so you know, maybe it's because I'm an engineer, but with excitement, I'm thinking numbers and getting people to really see that it does make a difference.
Yeah, you mentioned that some seniors from corporate companies are getting more aware of it and start to develop the idea of wanting to do something about it. What does it take to get more of these people going, and what's been their story of getting involved?
Well, when I say that a lot of people are, there's also a lot of people that are not yet, right? And therefore I think corporations can make a big difference. Most people work for money and salary and so on, and if a portion of their salary depends on doing the right thing, that makes a big difference. And like I say, many CEOs, I've been amazed at some of the CEOs we talk to that is not related to food at all. It could be in any kind of business, and some of them are changing their tune, and some of them have been put into that role because they can talk about sustainability. So I think there is a change going on, but it's still in an immature change. It's still in its infancy.
Thank you.
Kedar, I know you have a question, man. I can feel it. I can feel it from here.
Yeah. Hi, Bo.
Hello.
So I've been in touch with your staff and did something. So this is one thing which I already expressed with your team, but then I would also want your feedback on this. Could there be a standardized system, right, where it's somebody producing food from a hotel, and every hotel has this standard procedure to follow and to sort out their own food and measure it and keep it, so that it becomes easy to for people like you. It not necessarily be SOS, could be anybody, any organization can go and plug in this, like as you said, change from one system to another, make it more easy and efficient. What is your thoughts?
You mean not for individuals, right, but for organizations?
Yeah.
One of the big differences between the traditional food banking in the Western world and what we do is that 1/3 of the world's food is thrown away. We've all heard those statistics, right? But the difference is that in Europe and America, it's typically households, but not so here. You know that most households here cook everything and eat it. So here it's more corporations and commercial entities. And that makes it a big difference. That's why we are going after hotels and retailers and others where we can see that. It makes a big difference saving a steak in here than in New York City or somewhere. I mean, something like that's more tangible for everybody here is special, right? So yes, I mean, we have of course tried to set up a little bit of it. You probably heard about the Cook for SOS program, where restaurants and hotels can cook a certain number of meals and so on. We try to do that, but as far as having a standard, that is again up to getting that sustainability cost accepted. We have, for instance, the biggest hotel in Southeast Asia, up in Thailand. They have on the 2nd floor and the 7th floor, they have a refrigerator on both floors, right? And every time they're about to throw something away, they look at it and say, I can give this to SOS, and they put it into those refrigerators. And we come by every day. And before COVID, we were getting 200 plus kilos per day from one hotel, right? So it's amazing if you can just get get in there. So we do a lot of training, especially hotels and retailers. We go in and we train them on how to do things, but they're very different. They operate very differently, and they have to take it into their organization and adapt it. And some are more efficient than others at doing that, right? So, but yes, I do believe that there is a way that government and organizations like us could help get it more accepted. But it starts with education as well. I mean, one thing I can share in the beginning, we had this wonderful report we sent out to hotels about how many kilos they gave us. And when that ended up on the GM's desk, what? You know, so absolutely. So we had to talk about meals and CO2 and so on, right? But it is normal, right? And I learned that all the years in the software company. We were mathematically optimizing and so on. But there is waste. And if you want to run a 5-star hotel, you have to have waste. You cannot service your 5-star customers with a good service level if you don't have waste. So it's okay. You know, you accept that there's a certain level of waste, but instead of it going to the trash can, you give it to somebody like us, right? And that's where, if we can introduce rules like that, and I think we were successful before COVID. I mean, we had 85 hotels here, some very large ones, and they did implement very good rules for their staff.
It's a great question. Thank you, everybody. It reminds me, again, it's Made Janur. He comes from a martial art background, okay? And so he's teacher. He's like sensei, right? Sensei, whatever his name is, sensei, right? I keep getting his vision of this Karate Kid and Mr. Miyagi going kung fu, let's go. So basically, he was saying that, you know, for you to remember a move, you have to do it 10,000 times. So he does this in the context of plastic recycling, right? So instead of throwing it away, you put it in a plastic bin, right? So just by going from here to there, if you do it 3 times a day, multiply blah, 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 so 1,000 times, thank you, 1,000 times, and it begins to, you begin to remember it. And then 10,000 times, that's right, 10,000 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000, there you go, 100 times, 100 times, then you begin to remember it. Then it's 1,000 times, then it becomes embodied into your being. So instead of throwing it away or throwing it over your shoulder, you put it in a recycling receptacle. And then 10,000 times, it just becomes your way of life. You know, and so in many ways, you know, because I've always kind of wondered, right? So if I'm a hotel, if I'm a restaurant, you know, and I get so, it's easier for me just to throw it into a general bin, right? As opposed to separating it all out into something that can be taken away and kind of used, right? So from the context of that, you mentioned education here. So was there any kind of standout cases in all of those hotels that they literally went from like zero to becoming extraordinarily happy, extraordinarily easier to deal with, and they would just, you know, like psychologically they got it in their mind that this is what we need to do, and we're doing it, whether there's COVID or not, we're doing it anyway.
Yes, absolutely. Some of the hotels, we actually went around and put posters up on the walls in the kitchens with our staff and the food and the GM smiling. And that made all the difference, right? Because then they knew that giving this food was okay. So, you know, sometimes we had to take strange ways, but it is true. Education is everything. So in the beginning, we would have a hotel that says, oh, we're going to do it, but we're busy. So just put your containers over there in the corner, and it really wouldn't work. And also, of course, we have to be practical. We cannot have the chicken and the vegetables and so on mixed together. It has to be separated out. So it takes a little bit of education, and it takes a little bit of effort from the kitchen staff to do it. But once they all get behind it, and you know, sometimes they would come out to the villages. I mean, the best events was when we had chefs come out to a village and do some cooking for the villagers and so on, and they would see it all firsthand, right? I mean, it's no secret that there was one here in Bali where the GM came out and they had the big security guards with them, right, and so on. And they had tears rolling down their cheeks at some point because they were scooping the food up and so on, right? So getting that emotional involvement also is part of the education. It's not just about box 1, box 2, and so on, but you really got to feel it, and to stand there with this food and say, can it be saved? You have to have that emotional investment.
Love it. So in bringing this together, so keeping in mind your background and where you're from and where you're brought up, like if I asked you, are you proud of what you've achieved? What would you say?
Well, again, looking at the numbers, that's what I always go back to. Yes, I'm proud that we have achieved some amazing things, but we still have not even scratched the surface, right? And long after I'm no longer here, I hope that SOS will continue, be independent organizations in each country with local boards just driving it and continuing in the spirit. But yes, of course, I'm proud, and the 50 plus staff members that we have in the 2 countries, I mean, they are working so hard. So I'm very proud of them, their hard work, their creativity, and the partners. I mean, it really is about coming together, like I said, and it's not just Bali, same in Thailand. Just when people see it and they like it, chefs, for instance, some of these chefs in 5-star hotels that have been cooking for years and have seen this waste, and they know the waste is terrible, but for a commercial entity it's too costly to save that food and take it somewhere. So when we can then come with a free solution, give it to us and we'll take good care of it and use it for something. But those chefs, I mean, they're so appreciative. We have some that absolutely just love the concept because finally someone comes with a solution to that waste and put it to good use.
Thank you, Bo. We're drawing to a close, but I just want to say, that companies and, we had a little chat before, so we had a 2-minute chat. 2 minutes! It was literally 2 minutes before we started this, right? And it was interesting because, I think one of the things that we spoke about in a very short period of time was this thing about, understanding companies is understanding the people behind them, giving them a face, giving them a voice, allowing people into their heart to see, well, who am I actually backing, right? Who is, not necessarily controlling, but like who is implementing, who cares, right? And part of the thing which I love about this SpeakuP Monday or Q&As like this is that we get to know you a little bit, right? And 2 strangers before we start, all I saw was your smiling photo. That's all I saw. But like meeting you now, I get why Scholars of Sustenance is who it is, right? Because the passion and the energy, the drive and the care and the love that you inject from the top down. When I say top down, I don't mean in a traditional top down kind of a way, but literally from the top down, and just the way that you hire your staff and what is important for you as you hire them being the heart and the soul of what drives them, right? Not their credentials necessarily. And then just kind of, seeing the background that you have and seeing how that kind of unites and brings things in and how you motivate and inspire your team, and then just looking at the future of Scholars of Sustenance and that, I love that, the food equity and the education, Scholars of Sustenance, right? I didn't get that before. Damn it! I should have been sharper, right? But I get a much better rounded view of who Scholars of Sustenance are, and then when I meet the staff, like the guys here, I get them on a different level now as well. So I just want to thank you for being open to the process, trusting the process, trusting me, right?
And talking into the microphone.
I know. Having a bit of a laugh. It's funny because, at first I thought you were from the Netherlands, right? So there's a guy here in the audience. I'm like, let's unite these countrymen together, right? See what magic happens. And it's like, I'm from Denmark. I'm like, oh.
Don't worry, you're not the first.
I'm like, glad I stopped. So what we're going to do, right, in a minute, I'm going to let you close the show. So what does that mean? It means that if there's something that perhaps you want to say, maybe you said it before already, that's fine, or something new that drops in that you would love people to know. It can be personal, it can be business, whatever drops into your mind. I'll give you the opportunity to do that. There's no time, it's up to you how long. And we'll give you that in about a minute's time, so give you a moment to think. In the meantime, so for those of you watching here at home, thank you. Remember to share this. This is an organic grassroots Q&A. Later on this year, we're going to scale it to different heights. But this is where we are. This is number 96. So we're I know, 96 every week, and we haven't missed a beat. There's a guy over here called Alka who was there when we first started it at Life in Bali almost 2 years ago. Oh my God, and so it's phenomenal, what has happened, and I'm really enjoying the process. I love having people like you being open to and vulnerable to the process and showing us what makes you unique and special on that level, which I love, right? So otherwise, make sure if you're here, Tropical Nomad, every Monday, come and be part of the studio audience. And it's cool because then you get to meet and unite with some like minds, right? Some people that, because again, you're not here by any coincidence, right? There's a reason why you're here sitting in the audience. And so I really do encourage you to connect with one another if you're feeling the pull to speak to someone. Just go for it. Be pulled, right? That's very important. And next week we have a phenomenal guest as well, just like Bo, which I'm not going to tell you who because I can't remember. But it will be, I think it's one of the Yogi Lab guys again, actually. It might be Sasha from Yogi Lab. Actually, he's not. He's in the back. Where is he? He was here before. There you go. And I just realized who it was. He's not here, so he won't realize I forgot. So now, in the meantime, guys, thank you for watching. Really appreciate you being here. And if you want to be on this settee, on this comfortable sofa, it's self-selecting. So if you're feeling the pull, again, the pull or a tug or a tap on the shoulder, reach out to me, DM me, or come see me. You know how to find me, and we can get you here, all right? We have some phenomenal guests coming up, so keep watching as we enter or get towards episode number 100. 100! And huge thanks to the Tropical Nomad team, Ichi, Bella, Guzman, and all the crew here at Tropical Nomad for making this possible every week. Really love these guys and really appreciate it. So, without further ado, I'm going to take a breath. And then let you finish. Thank you, Brother Bo. Really appreciate it.
But that's not fair. What could I possibly say? But, we have a status call in SOS between all the countries and America once a week. And they do the same to me. Okay, Bo, now we want you to do the honors to close out the call. And I'm like, oh, gosh, what am I going to say? So it's the same. You did it again. But it's okay, If I just have to say something, I'm getting up in the years now, right? I was very lucky. I had the software company. It was not without challenges, obviously. It was hard work and crazy and so on, but it was amazing. And the travel, the exposure to cultures, it has been an incredible ride, right? And then I sold that and started SOS, and it was just supposed to be this little hobby project. Right now it's taken over. I think I work harder now than ever. But main thing is, don't ever stop. Don't ever give up, right? And everything is a progression. You learn something, but you learn it so you can put it to better use in the next stage, and next stage, and the next stage. And that's what's so amazing about it, right? So never stop. That's all.
Thank you, Brother Bert. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Good luck with number 100. And everybody here, thank you for coming. Yes. Most appreciated. So remember, we have like a WhatsApp group which you can join, or a SpeakuP Monday group on Facebook is another way to kind of get in. And then that way, there's a lot that happens inside, and also keeps you up to date with what's coming and what's